Pastor John is a fake. Pastor John was a kind man, but he was a fake pastor. The only reason he studied the Bible was so he would always have something to say to his congregation. Mr. John was married to his high school girlfriend when he was 21 years old, and she was 19 at the time they got married. Big Johnny, as he was called in high school, was a church boy. He prayed and knew about God and often heard from his parents how kind God is. But I guess most of us did. Big Johnny's wife died of snakebite while they were camping. Johnny prayed all he could and said all he knew, but nothing was able to save the love of his life. After the death of his wife, Johnny was not mad at God as most of us would have been. He just concluded in his mind that God cannot heal, that maybe it's true that God does judge people when they die, but that's all. He for sure does not do all these miracles that people say he does. Johnny said to himself that people want to believe that God can do these miracles and signs and wonders, so they create these things in their mind. Years gone by, Mr. John has worked at the gym, at a clinic as a research volunteer, and as a ranger, trying to help people stay alive instead of waiting for miracles. This was the only reason he did all that, but yet somehow people won't stop dying around Mr. John. Mr. John was not a flirt, and he was not a liar. He does not talk a lot. He will rather reply with a sentence instead of an answer. People felt that Mr. John was idealistic because of his deep words and sentences. On the 11th of November 1998, Mr. John's dad and mom had an accident while returning from a Christian seminar. Mr. John loved his parents so much, for they were his only relatives. He loved his mom so much and adored her. I remember that day when he said to his mom, "I really believe a good woman is a gift that no man truly deserves." His mom smiled and said, "Well, your dad must have cut corners to deserve this gift, or he is a good man." Mr. John's dad worked at the post office, and he was an honest and decent man that cared about the people in his community and anyone that came across him. They called him Sir Stamp because he never forgets to remind his customers about the stamps, and sometimes he gives free stamps. He loved his family, and his wife and his son John was his family. He worked hard to provide for the family with smiles and gratitude to God for his hard work. He believed that God had given him strength to work and allowed him find favor amongst the people of his community. He was never late to work, and yet he never defaulted his responsibility at home. Mr. John admired his dad, and one day John told his dad, "If pregnancy were a thing of choice, Dad, I know you would have taken it upon yourself to be pregnant just to save Mom from the pain she endured because of me." His dad laughed and said, "Son, it might be the last thing a mother will give up." Mr. John loved his dad till his dying day. After Mr. John's parents' accident, Mr. John was lucky to spend a few months with them, but in the hospital. A kind nurse by the name of Natalie was taking care of them in the hospital, and she always gave Mr. John information while she was at work. At this time, Mr. John was working in a bookshop, so he had access to books, and he did read a lot to divert his pain. Before Mr. John's parents passed, they called their lawyer and transferred all they had to Mr. John, a big land close to the city bus station and their family house. Mr. John cried while the lawyer was taking notes. Natalie, the nurse, could not subdue her emotions, and she joined him in tears. Finally, the hour had come, and John's mom called him and said to him, "Son, are you scared?" Mr. John replied, "It would be normal to be scared, but I am angry, which is what I'm scared of."